There we go. Um,
That was fancy.
Hello. Yeah, I know. We're only going to get fancier. This is as not fancy as it's ever going to be. So I'm coming to
Speaking
you
of
from a
fancy, this is
hotel.
going to be
Yeah.
the last day
Well,
I'm going to be in this room before I move into my fancy office, which I'm looking
my
forward to.
God. You're going to have your crib and your office in separate rooms? That's crazy.
I know, yeah, it's going to be crazy. Yeah.
It's good to separate where you sleep from where you work, you know?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, yeah. I've kind of
Yeah.
outgrown it now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm coming at it from a hotel in Brooklyn, and then I'm gonna go to Philadelphia, and then I'm gonna go to Poland for App.js. And in contrast to last year, I'll be there for a week this time. So
Nice. Yeah. Last year, I regretted not being there longer. I think
yeah, same.
adding in the extra time is definitely worth it.
Yeah. Hopefully I can like crash at the software mansion office or something for like a day in terms of like working, not sleeping. I'm not gonna sleep in the software mansion office unless they let me. Um, but yeah, I definitely like that city a lot. So I want to spend more time, especially if anyone's gonna hang around. Um, but okay, so a lot of stuff going on. I can provide the very quick stuff on my end, and then like I'd rather spend longer time talking about like the JSX transform stuff and the SDK issues and stuff like that. But basically, Nativewind UI is like we're just about to release a companion app that lets you like actually like hold the stuff in your hand. And I want to use that similar concept for Nativewind stuff, right? So people will be able to like actually use on their device like dark light mode stuff. So in some ways it'll be just like a mirror of the Nativewind UI app, but yeah, there's a couple things that I want to work out that I'll probably just like message you separately about, like the dark light mode toggle taking longer than it should, i.e. not being instantaneous. Yeah, but we'll just sort of, figure that out separately. But yeah, so that's going to be released shortly.
On that subject, like that is something I want to explore a bit more. As it's something that the React Native ecosystem hasn't really explored, of actually fully embracing the platform in terms of platform colors. So often we define our theme with like set values in a light mode, in a dark mode, things like that. But it'd be interesting to have a theme that was purely native platform colors. Yeah, so just use platform colors. And so that way there is no light and dark mode in your app. Your NAP just automatically shifts with the operating system, which has a lot of benefits of kind of your app automatically adapting to the accessibility colors. So for example, if someone's got something that like mutes or grayscale only, your app will automatically go to grayscale only. Light and dark mode automatically transition, things like that. So it'd be good to have a platform color theme that people can try out and use. I know this is very popular on desktop, where people change their platform colors a lot more often. Like you can say that like, hey, this app has like a tint to it, and it should do the system colors with a tint, and that's like what this app's theme is. I wonder if we could do something like that for native as well, or for native when they kind of like lean more into the platform.
Yeah,
the way it becomes a bit harder then is for web, which doesn't have the concept of platform colors. So we'll have to try and work out that.
Yeah, we're having a pretty fun time with, another part of Nativewind UI that's coming shortly here is the version 2 of RN primitives, right? Which sort of will serve both mobile and web. Addressing that has a lot of caveats. I get surprisingly there's quite a bit of questions in the Discord about Nativewind with respect to like, can you use it universally, or like what's it like with React Native Web? And I'm like, well, you can use it universally, but like the limitations with respect to React Native Web are largely like React Native Web and not necessarily Nativewind. So it's like the maintainer of that library, Nicholas Conti.
Yep.
Yeah, like he had mentioned, I think he said that, you know, he'd be putting in some time there. I don't know whether that is held true. But you know, there's no way to like really verify that. So what the plan there is with respect to just like React Native Web is like I have no idea. But like I guess whatever it is, I wouldn't expect that it will move very quickly. That's my baseline understanding.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the status is on React Native Web. I know that they added the React 19 support. That's for the Expo release that was put out in time, but I'm not too sure on what other features are on the timeline now.
But yeah, I don't see a reason that you can't use Nativewind universally. It's more so, how do you choose to use Nativewind universally? I am personally of the opinion, and maybe Mark, your opinion differs from this, but I just don't think that React Native is in a good place for web. Like, we're still very, very early on. And there is no good approach. They're actually all bad. And it's going to take some time before we more or less get an opinionated take that's worth a damn, that is actually capable of what folks want. And so you're actually better served, or when I need to build things that serve both targets, I'm still building separate targets, you know, usually like Next.js for web, Expo for mobile. And I know that Expo is doing a lot of work to bridge that gap, but there's still a lot of work ahead, you know, to do so.
Yeah, it's easy to make generalized statements here, but really everyone's experience is going to be quite different. Web is a difficult target because some people want some certain components to work in the same way, or they don't want to have to write different components for each platform, so they want to have a universal component, or they want like some other APIs to be the same across all the platforms. So it's a bit difficult because everyone's experience is slightly different, and because it's slightly different, everyone hits a wall of issues at a different point in time, and there's no like one fix for everyone's problems. So I think the most difficult part about it is simply just that, like the lack of information, and everyone's trying to do different things with it makes it a little bit difficult to work with. Like even now when you're saying like I use like Next.js for web and Explorer for mobile, that's going to lead you into completely different experiences to someone who's using Expo for everything, and the issues you're going to encounter are going to be completely different to the person using Expo, but you both chalk it up as being React Native Web issues that need to be fixed. So that's what I mean, like it's really hard to like categorize it and not be generalized. But yes, so you can do it. There are ways, but yes, unfortunately, there's no like one opinionated, this is the best approach. Because of that, that's what makes it a little bit harder than normal.
Yeah, and I fully expect by the end of this year, if not sooner, perhaps into next year, early next year, we're just going to start to see basically what's on the web now, which is a multitude of different opinionated approaches for different use cases, right? Prioritizing different things popping up. There's not going to be much, like actually one of the comments we have is there's not a one size fits all. Like there's just too much variation in what people want to do. So Nativewind's job in that is to, you know, give you access to Tailwind utility classes in both targets, like serve as a mapping function between what the, you know, the actual engine does, and how you're trying to interface with that engine. So
Yeah, I think the best progress we've had so far is like Expo DOM components, which allows you to just write the web in a native application, which then renders as the web on the web. At least that's like the first step at trying to bridge, instead of having like a Next.js and an Expo application, have the full web inside Expo, which helps it a little bit. But yeah, there's no.
I think it's a good like
One.
intermediary step, but something has to
Yeah,
follow that is
that's its
much better.
goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I figured that's its goal. I would have been very surprised if Expo's like longer term stance was like DOM components, basically.
No.
But yeah, it's a fine temporary solution. So that's, completely separate. You can talk about that for days. Regarding the do you want to go into the SDK 53 stuff first, or do you want to do the version 5 and like sort of the JSX transform?
All right, let's talk about SDK 53, because we've initially had some reports and then there was nothing. And then there's been a lot more reports that have come through. And the interesting thing about this is originally I thought that there could have been a problem just because of the number of reports coming through. But as we start going through the issues, each one has been something slightly different. And not necessarily a problem with Nativewind or Expo. Normally it's due to a custom Metro config or a misconfigured project or something that wasn't actually working in SDK 52, but it didn't have an error message. And now in SDK 53, it's now telling you that it's wrong. And people never actually realized that it wasn't working properly before. So it appears to be working, but I still want people to send through reports of issues that they are having. But we need people to send through individual reports with individual reproductions instead of just jumping into an issue and being like, yes, I'm having this problem too, or me too. Because what we're seeing is no two issues are actually the same, that they're very personalized. And if you simply just say, I am having this issue as well, we're just going to fix the original reported one, and that doesn't guarantee that your issue will be fixed as well. Yeah. So
in fact, it can draw out how much time it'll take for us to fix the original issue because tracing the source, right, and like identifying the smoking gun becomes obscured.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, we just need these kind of individual reports, but we also need to isolate, okay, is this the SDK 53 issue or is this an issue with something else? So SDK 53 added some changes to things like module resolution. And because of that, a lot of new packages have updated their code with this new module resolution. And then have now like new installation instructions or things like that. A big one here is now a lot of packages are asking you to make changes to your Metro configuration, especially with the resolve request or resolve module callback function. This function previously was very rarely used. It was only really used by the SVG transform and by Expo internally. But now it's becoming the go-to add this to your Metro configuration. And because of that, Nativewind is throwing a couple of false positive warnings saying that your Metro config has been incorrectly configured. Saying that, because what we used to do is we require this function, we require to be in there, and part of our like doctor checks to ensure that things were installed properly, we were making sure that that function was our version, essentially. So when you do your Metro config, the last line should be with Nativewind and then your config, and we were making sure that that function was ours. What we've found now is that people have upgraded. Their library has now said, oh, actually, you need this other with XYZ wrapper around your config.
They're adding a second one.
So then they're adding a second one, and it modifies, and now the Nativewind doctor throws this false positive because it's no longer the last config wrapper. So
yeah,
we kind of need to make a call here. Like, do we get rid of the doctor check? And say, okay, let's not check for this function. Or do we change the warning message to say that we should be the last one? But then the problem is that other libraries might start doing a doctor check as well, and then saying like, no, I should be the last one. And there's no so there. Or do we just give people an option to silence the warning, and go from there?
Yeah, I think, look, to Danny's point, hi Danny. Danny is the other maintainer of Create Expo Stack, aka rn-new, and also Storybook. Is it React Native Storybook? Yeah, and so to answer your question, Mark, I think that if people change, like third-party library authors are changing things, or just even maybe Expo or React Native changes things, like that's to be expected. I think it comes down to a communication issue, is that it falls on Expo, and maybe to some extent the React Native team, of like, when these changes are made, what are the big libraries, and like going out and making sure that, hey, we're making these changes. We know you make changes to these things. Make sure that you're, whatever handles this. Like, we're gonna, or even just flagging like, hey, we're making these changes to Metro. I think you're talking about specifically a third-party library author, so this is not the case.
The issue here is that the libraries work in isolation. So it's not a problem with the libraries in isolation. It's when you combine them together. Yeah. Because the way the Metro config it works through composition, not through, I don't know, just giving it multiple options that it can then iterate through. And so it's easy to screw up the composition, and not call like the parent. Like if you're overriding something to making sure that you preserve the current one. I think the issue at the moment is I need to raise this with the Sentry team. I think their latest change does this where they don't consider that there could already be someone else using this function as well. So they set it, they override the resolve request to be how they want it to be, but not realizing that maybe another library has set that as well.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the Nativewind's own doctor function, like its purpose is to raise these issues in a way that, like, once you're done with the doctor, it works, right? So if it doesn't do that, then we shouldn't offer it until it does, right? And that, I think, is an all or nothing thing. If what you're saying about, like, with respect to the composition approach that Metro takes, yeah, it would have to be able to sort of handle at least a whitelist of the most popular kinds of things that would end up causing this issue, and ideally like all of them.
Yeah,
which is not
easy. I think we just need to change our doctor to maybe change the wording of the message to say that we would, with Nativewind, should be the last one. And then maybe we actually need to change the actual how the doctor code works. So
in what sense?
In Nativewind, we do have a poison import. So by default, Nativewind tries to import a file, and if that file just contains throw new error. So this file should never be actually imported. And when you inside resolve request, we see if this request is coming in for this poisoned file, and we redirect it to another file that does nothing. So that's one way that we can tell if it has been configured properly. Or like when you run verify installation, it shouldn't throw this error because the resolve request should have redirected it somewhere else. So I'm not too sure if maybe we just need to add that into the normal startup. So not only behind verify request, but inside the normal startup to expose these problems earlier.
Mhm.
Or we just need to actually contact library authors and be like, hey, you're not the only person using this Metro option. Consider that there could actually be someone else using it.
Right. I guess in my experience so far, that is not a very one
Yeah,
scalable
it's not
solution
sustainable,
to,
that
yeah,
solution, yeah.
um, yeah, I think making making some adjustments to our doctor, uh, and perhaps also the verify installation function, uh, which are those the same thing? I actually am not. There isn't a doctor dedicated doctor command, is there?
No, we have like a startup doctor in development.
Uh huh.
There's not a doctor command. It's like a with Nativewind has like some checks that it does, and then the verify installation does some additional runtime checks as well.
What Something that just popped into my mind. So Enkia here, hold on. He said he has it working, right? And I'm like, oh, what we could do as a sort of interim solution is that we could have some community provided config files for different configurations, just to sort of like, again, as a temporary place to sort of point people, um, while we come up with a more robust solution. Um, and that way, if Danny, say, is having trouble with like Sentry and having SDK 53 with Nativewind, then he at least can go reference an example that is working. A lot of the times, that's how issues for Nativewind with respect to the metro.config.js end up getting resolved, is people just see, you think like the NX monorepo setup, right? Most of that problem was just like, how do you configure the project such that it works well? And once they had that, that was like the bulk of that PR. So maybe that's a solution, especially as we start to introduce that community page that I was talking about last time. What are your thoughts on that approach?
Yeah. The problem is that people don't always read the docs for things. They'll read the installation
100%.
page, and if we don't
Yes.
error early and tell them what's wrong, they may not find it. Um, so yeah, and then it's not just this one library. It's going to be other libraries moving forward in the
Yeah.
future. Part of the problem as well is just that with SDK 53 switched over to this new module system, and people shouldn't actually be using resolve request. They're using it because their module broke under this new module system, and instead of like, it will take a little bit of time for them to fix it. I'm not throwing them under the bus, but I'm just saying, like, instead of fixing it the proper way, they're using resolve request to shortcut that work. So instead of having to change everything, they're saying, oh, we'll just write this function that can rewrite requests on the fly back to how they were.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like a good short-term fix, but unfortunately has like hindered us here a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Let me noodle on the best approach here, stepwise, probably, because it's hard to address. People don't read the docs in every single way possible. Yeah. So the what was it? The other issues ultimately, like, just rather than posting, hey, I'm facing this as well, please like open a new issue. If it is a duplicate, like, Trust will mark it as a duplicate, or I'll mark it as a duplicate and be like, okay, like, hey, track it here. But yeah, posting like, I'm facing this issue when in fact you're probably facing a separate issue is not at all helpful, and is, best case scenario, not helpful, worst case scenario, misleading, and we'll end up having the core issue take longer. So for the issue that you actually had recreated, Mark, I think you had mentioned that you had come to wrap up a solution for that. Is that still the case?
So that one, I think Yeah, so that was the problem with the resolve request, and I was thinking of different ways that we could try and fix it. But I think we just have to kind of help inform people about what the problem was. So it was just an issue here of the issue was like us detecting if
Mhm.
resolve requests had been overridden or not. That was the problem. So in the examples that had been sent to me, people had overridden it, and our doctor check was not, like, we weren't handling it properly, and so that was essentially failing. The issues that I have seen recently, though, with the upgrade as well, is because of the changes to the module system. A lot of libraries have now published new versions, and the new module system has gone from CommonJS to ESM, and that's a bit of a hard upgrade to do yourself if you're not very familiar with how the module systems work and build systems in general. So a lot of people have switched over to using things like pre-done build systems, like React Builder Bob and things like that. And this is where we'll move to the JSX conversation side of things, of where now libraries that have been built with these libraries or these tools don't necessarily work with Nativewind anymore. And that's because they are removing JSX from their source code before publishing to NPM. So the problem with these libraries is, well, when you start your application, Metru does passes through Babel to transform your code. One of these passes is going to convert JSX into JavaScript. And at that point in time is when Nativewind hooks into your code and says, okay, when we go from JSX to JavaScript, we're going to go from JSX to Nativewind JavaScript.
So which includes the like class name property and stuff. Yeah.
We hook in there, and that's why you need to set the JSX import source, because that's saying that you want to use Nativewind as the source of your JSX. Now that libraries are pre-compiling before they get published to NPM, they are doing that JSX transform, so from JSX to JavaScript, locally on the library author's machine, and he's not using Nativewind. So therefore,
it at build time rather than at runtime.
Yeah, well, it's confusing because it's the library that's being published, it's build time, not your application's build time.
That is a little tricky.
So there's two build times here. Like,
yeah,
when the library gets published, normally a person might run like TypeScript, like TSC, and convert from TypeScript to JavaScript. That's the library's build time. It gets published to NPM. You install it on your computer, and then when you run npm like expo start, it then goes through another build step to actually build up the application locally on your computer. Before, all JSX was typically transformed locally on your machine. So libraries would be published to npm with the JSX preserved, and then all the JSX got transformed locally. But this new approach and the things that people are switching to is transforming the JSX remotely on the library author's machine. So therefore, no transformation actually happens locally on your computer.
So we would have to do that as well in order to not break everything for a bunch of people who are using.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things here. Yes, actually, Danny just said in chat that library authors are not doing things properly because they can point to the untranspiled version. But again, this is asking every single library author to do things correctly, which is a big ask. I wish they did this, but the truth is that just not everyone is. So it's a little bit frustrating that they're not doing it there. There's also some people in the React Native ecosystem who believe that everything should be transfiled before publishing to NPM. So they're not doing this like they know that they could, but they're just not doing it because they want to push the React Native ecosystem in like a certain direction. But we'll get into that conversation later. But essentially what this means for us is we're at the tail end of this kind of like political and knowledge battle, and we need a solution that just works. Like, we can't really just tell everyone what to do. we're not that big and popular enough to force everyone's hand.
We're pretty big.
So
We're popular.
we're pretty big.
200,000 people per week.
Yeah, so it will break. The thing not transforming before shipping, it can break. It will break on web on all platforms. And so I think I'm going to roll these new JSX, the new transform that we're just testing now for version 5 into the current Nativewind, just to fix this problem now that people are experiencing. So what we'll be doing is looking at removing a JSX transform and instead rewriting import statements. So before, when you import the JSX transform, you would be telling Babel to add an import statement to import the JSX runtime functions from Nativewind when they would normally come from the React library. That's like the proper way of doing things. But the other way of doing it is actually just telling Babel to forcefully change these import statements to come from Nativewind. So instead of using the official APIs to do it, we use Babel to just rewrite the code entirely and go from there. So we might switch to that approach quite soon and get that out and get people using it, just to unblock people who are having this problem right now.
Are there implications of backporting that to like version 4 and not just rolling?
No. So I want to backport that. I want to backport that sooner rather than later to get people using it. This will allow people to stop using the JSX, and so this will turn other libraries do this. So this is how React Native Web actually works. So when you write React Native Web, you normally import Vue from React Native. And then when it goes through this build step, it sees that import and it rewrites your JavaScript to say, actually import it from React Native Web instead of React Native. So we'll be using a similar sort of approach.
So Nativewind currently works is, that's like not that different from how Nativewind currently works, right? You're importing these components with, The difference is that we're using the APIs that we were told to use by Meta. So there is an official way to rewrite these imports, and it's called the JSX import transform. And so we were using the official proper way of doing it, but that way no longer works as well. So now we're going to switch to the more cowboy approach really used by other people and forcefully do it that way. Was this the whole Dan Abramov thing?
No, this is different.
Okay.
This is me just trying to respect the things that people say we should be doing and trying to be good. And then that comes along and bites you. So
teach you to follow the rules.
I know. Yeah, that's the problem.
Okay, so Danny mentioned that there's this way to provide an export field or exports field. Would that ultimately then allow for both once the JSX transform stuff is removed, that wouldn't
this will just, the new approach will work with either method, so it won't depend on the package at all.
Okay.
The annoying part about this, so we'd probably put it under an option at first and then make it the new way, but it's not going to be, people won't notice because it's all hidden inside the Babel preset. So as long as you've got the Babel preset set up, which you should, then it should just change behind the scenes. You're not going to notice how things change.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So then that though is standing in the way of the version 5 release. As the last.
This should be like the last thing before we start testing things. So I'll roll this back to V4, get people to test this out, see how this goes, and then we can get up to V5 beta.
Okay.
Just
cool.
Want to fix the problem that people currently have with the current live version now.
Right. Yeah, I haven't gotten around to getting through the migration guide yet. We do have the blog up now, so I'm
Hmm.
going to sort of modify your PR slightly
Yep.
to account for that. But yeah, I haven't fully gotten around to working through the migration guide for version 5. I should be able to publish that this week though. Um, yeah, and then we'll just sort of edit it as the version 5 beta actually rolls out, and we start to see people like trying it properly.
Yep.
Um, and I think that's largely it. The community page is still coming along. Nikita is finishing finals, so he's out
Hmm.
for the week. Um, we're hoping he gets at least a 60% or whatever he needed on one of his exams to get through. He's graduating now, finally. Um, but yeah, outside of the community page, not much is happening on the new website. And yeah, we're just cooking on NativeWindUI stuff predominantly. There's one last change I'll be making today specifically for the PNPM installation guide, which is the PNPM does not apparently support inline, like the up caret thing for versioning, like other things do. So we have to do a hard version. I was going to ask, it's going to be kind of a headache to constantly be aware of the latest version for a specific minor version of React Native Reanimated, say. And so what you thought might be the best approach if we're going to set a hard version for those people using PNPM.
Yeah, I didn't realize that PNPM didn't allow version ranges.
Apparently it doesn't. I've gotten like 2 points of feedback that people are running into problems with. It's always PNPM. It's never anything else.
Hmm. I mean, yeah. We could just set a version and then put a note on it for PNPM users. They need to run PNPM update to see if there is something there.
Or I guess we could technically just set a patch version fixed and then just sort of like,
I mean, this would be a patch, because
I mean to say for
there
the
are no
current
break.
the current thing, right, where you're doing like like if you go through the installation
Yeah.
doc for using PNPM with Nativewind, you have to install React Native Reanimated as an example, and we currently specify like React Native Reanimated at v3
Yeah.
point, whatever 4.17 or something. But where every other package manager has the up caret for it to specify like get the latest patch version or whatever, that does not work. Like that, like if you copy and paste that command and try to run it with PNPM, it apparently does not work. So I'm just gonna have to remove the up caret, I guess, for PNPM and just have them use the fixed patch version, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like maybe it should be something else for PNPM. Like it should do ranges because it has an upgrade that seems to check version ranges. I'm not too sure because I'm not a big user of PNPM.
Yeah, neither am I. I fully embraced your boomer tool fatigue mentality at this point. People are like, why don't you use Bun? And I'm like, because NPM works every time.
Yes, if
Like,
it's
it
slow but
takes
it
so
works,
long.
it still works.
Exactly.
Is my
Exactly.
philosophy. My problem with PNPM as well is that it is an amazing fast package manager, but for it to work with React Native, you need to set all these settings like no hoist, and things like that.
Yeah,
And
there's too many
that
incantations.
each one of those options slowly disables one of the things that makes PNPM fast. And by the time you get it working for React Native, you have disabled every optimization that PNPM does. And so at that point, it just does a slightly faster linking, but it's still close to Yarn
Yeah.
install times. Like Yeah, disabling the optimizations just to use it. Yeah, so I get people who like to use it for muscle memory, things like that, but that's cool. But it's no longer quick with React Native.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I can
maybe we
take a
just
look
need to
at,
find someone who uses it and find out what a better command should be. But I don't want
you
to
know, who
like.
uses it is Cedric. Cedric's a big PNPM fan from what I remember.
I should no. Well, he's switched to Bun now.
My God, that
I
is a
think he
new
uses
era
Bun
right there.
because Bun
Okay.
is actually quicker. Actually, he could be. We've had a lot of issues with Bun as well. This is why we have package manager fatigue, where Bun has started the putting files in weird locations in node modules.
Dude,
And
forget that. Wait, didn't they just finally? Oh my God, this was the bane of my existence because we support it for Create Expo Stack or whatever, and that just horrendous bun.lock file that it would create that was just like just a bunch of symbols. You know, it was like a binary file, and I'm like, you cannot be serious. Like you like this should have been a non-starter day one. Like if this is what your lock file looks like, this is absolutely unacceptable. And I think they undid it. Now it's not that in the latest version, but that for a while was just like the baseline why I do not use Bun.
yeah, I think Bun can read a yarn lock file and write out a yarn lock file. I think that's
Yeah.
like the best approach for it. But it's doing something weird with hoisting that we found recently, where we tried using it at Expo, and it just everyone's node modules was a different structure, even with a lock file. And we went back to yarn again. So yeah. Anyway,
That's
package managers.
okay.
Oh, they're fun.
Yep.
Yeah,
All
everyone
right.
tries to write a fast one with shortcuts, and it just creates more problems.
Yeah. Danny is gonna know a lot about the lock files. He's constantly getting complaints about all the different package managers and the Create Expo Stack issues. Um, yeah, so I think that's largely it, unless folks have other questions. I do want to try one feature before we stop. This is like, what is this? Danny, can you make a comment that's not like something terribly gross or whatever? I just want to see it pop up, you know. But then like I don't know if it'll go away, but it's apparently StreamYard. Here, hold on, maybe I can do it. Boom. There it is. Let's go. I'm gonna turn that off before things get horrendously terrible. We'll need a moderator in here before we properly turn that on. But it would be cool to just see the comments kind of like pop up on the screen. Cool. So I assume you don't want to assign a timeline to the JSX transform thing, or do you have a general sense of? Are you guys on like the tail end of the SDK 53 stuff, or?
Yeah, so I've kind of already got a version working. It just
Okay.
needs some more unit tests against it. So it really depends on what these unit tests are going to find. And writing Babel unit tests, I don't know if anyone's done this before. It's fun. Turns out JavaScript can be rewritten in many different ways. So I think we'll put it out there, put the flag for people to have problems, and then kind of see, like, maybe we'll just go out what we have now, see what people say, and then kind of adjust feedback. That's why I have a flag, just so we can get some people using it, and then as they report issues, we'll go from there. But
Okay.
we'll just put it behind a flag at first before we make it the default.
Sounds great. All right. And I last note, I have been chatting with Marcel about the analytics stuff. We're gonna get on their open source thing hopefully in like a monthish, and
Nice.
until then, I'll just set up like post hog or whatever, something in the meantime to be, you know, an option. But yeah, last I checked, 4,000 people visit per day. Something stupid. It was something like absolutely insane. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. New website's been a big hit.
Yeah, people really like it. I'm still getting compliments on it, including from people at Vercel, actually. So that's been
Nice.
very nice. Um, all right. I guess we will catch y'all next week. Thanks for joining. Expect those changes for the JSX transform, I guess, like in the next like 2-ish weeks.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
yeah. All right, y'all.
Oh,
Have a
and
good
keep
one.
sending through issues with
Yes.
reproductions, SDK 53.
Yes.
Definitely with reproductions. So
We
everyone can get
love
the follow of the
reproductions.
issues.
All right. Have a good one. See ya.
See you guys.